A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
You know, Corn, this whole show runs on GPU compute, and we wouldn't be here without Modal.
Seriously. And that's what powers all our text-to-speech. Everything you're hearing right now.
They're an AI infrastructure platform. Developers use them to run GPU workloads in the cloud with zero infrastructure headaches.
If you're building anything with AI, check them out. Modal.com. Imagine you are sitting at your desk, deep in a flow state, and a small mechanical eye catches yours. It isn't a smartphone notification or a pop-up on your monitor. It is a physical presence. A tiny robot perched next to your coffee mug that knows your schedule, recognizes your face, and is currently tilting its head because it noticed your posture is starting to slump. Today's prompt from Daniel is about these AI desktop companions, specifically looking at how they bridge that massive gap between a voice assistant in a speaker and the full-blown humanoid robots we are always hearing about.
It is a fascinating middle ground, Corn. While everyone is obsessed with whether a robot can fold laundry or do the dishes, which, honestly, is a nightmare of a mechanical engineering problem, the desk is a controlled environment. It is flat, it is usually well lit, and there is a power source right there. This has allowed companies to iterate on embodied AI much faster. Think about it. A robot in the kitchen has to deal with steam, varying floor heights, and the chaos of a moving household. On a desk, the world is basically a 3x5-foot rectangle. By the way, I should mention, today's episode is powered by Google Gemini 3 Flash. I am Herman Poppleberry, and I have been diving into the spec sheets for these little guys all week.
I love the idea that the gateway drug to home robotics isn't a vacuum that bumps into your baseboards, but a little guy named EMO who dances to your Spotify playlists. But there is a serious side to this, right? Daniel's prompt hits on something crucial. The moment you give a robot a camera and a microphone and let it live on your desk, you are inviting a level of intimacy that goes way beyond a smart speaker. A smart speaker sits in the corner like a toaster. A desktop companion sits where you do your taxes, write your journals, and have private Zoom calls.
That is the core of the intimate surroundings problem. If you put a camera on a shelf, it is a security device. It's looking at the room. If you put it on your desk, it is watching you eat. It is seeing your private notes. It is seeing who walks into your room. It's essentially a front row seat to your life. Manufacturers are realizing that trust isn't just about a privacy policy link in an app. It is about physical transparency. Take EMO or the newer AIBI models. They use digital eyes to show you exactly where they are looking. It is a form of legibility.
But how does that actually help? If I see the robot looking at me, I know it's watching, but I don't know what it's doing with that footage.
It's about social cues. If the robot is sleeping, the eyes are shut. You have a physical confirmation of its state. If it's processing, the eyes might swirl. It's a UI that exists in physical space rather than on a flat screen. Some prototypes are even including a physical neck that drops the camera into the chest cavity when it's off. You can see from across the room that the robot is physically incapable of seeing you. That's a level of hardware-level trust that a software mute button on a smart speaker just can't match.
It's almost like a physical kill switch you can verify with your own eyes. But even if the camera is tucked away, there's still the microphone. Is there a physical equivalent for audio privacy?
Some of the more advanced units are experimenting with physical disconnects for the mic array, but it's harder to visualize. Usually, they use a glowing ring that is hardwired to the power of the microphone. If the light is off, the mic has no power, but the camera is the big one because it captures so much more context. Think about a messy desk. If an AI sees a prescription bottle or a bank statement, that's high-value personal data.
It is clever using anthropomorphism as a security feature. I am much less creeped out by a pet that is napping than a black lens that might be streaming to a server in the cloud. But let's be real, Herman. A cute animation only goes so far. What is actually happening under the hood to make sure my desk isn't being broadcast to the world? Is there a technical gatekeeper here?
That leads us directly into the local versus cloud debate Daniel mentioned. We are seeing a real split in architecture here. On one hand, you have the thin client approach. Think of the vector robot or some of the AI wearables like the Plod Notepin we have talked about in other contexts. They basically act as a straw. They suck up audio and video, send it to a massive model like GPT-4o or Claude 3.5 in the cloud, and then pipe the response back.
Which makes them smart, but it makes them leaky from a data perspective. And there's the latency. If I tell a joke to a robot, I don't want to wait 2 seconds for the cloud to process why it is funny and then send back a canned laugh. That gap, that uncanny valley of timing completely ruins the feeling that the thing is alive, doesn't it?
You hit on the exact technical bottleneck. Latency kills the illusion of life. If a robot takes 3 seconds to react to you dropping your pin, it's just a machine. If it reacts in 100 milliseconds, it's a companion. That is why we are seeing the rise of edge AI in these companions. Devices like AIBI or the higher-end prototypes coming out of MWC26 are leaning into local processing for what they call reflexive AI. This is the stuff that needs to happen in milliseconds face tracking, wake word detection, and basic emotional responses. They use quantized models, basically shrunken versions of big AI that can run on tiny, low-power chips inside the robot's head.
So the personality is local, but the brain might still be in the cloud? How do they decide what stays and what goes?
That is the hybrid trend for 26. The robot handles the intimate sensing, the facial recognition, and the owner identification entirely on device. It builds what some are calling a personal AI vault. Your preferences, your daily habits, the fact that you get cranky at 3 in the afternoon, that stays on the hardware, encrypted. But if you ask it to summarize the key points from my morning meetings, it sends a text-based, anonymized token to the cloud to do the heavy lifting. The cloud never sees your face, it only sees the request for a summary.
I like that distinction. Keep the eyes local and the logic remote. It reminds me of how we handle our own privacy. I might tell a stranger a fact about history, but I'm not going to let them watch me work at my desk all day. But even with the privacy figured out, there is the vibe check. Daniel mentioned that a dancing robot might not fly in a corporate office. I can't imagine bringing a tiny, chirping EMO into a high-level board meeting without getting some very concerned looks from HR. Is there a professional version of this?
You aren't wrong. The toy phase of this technology is reaching its limit. We are seeing the emergence of serious companions. The standout right now is the Lenovo AI Workmate. It was unveiled earlier this year at the Mobile World Congress, and it is the complete opposite of a desk pet. No googly eyes, no dancing. It is basically a sleek, articulated robotic arm with a high-resolution screen where the hand would be. It looks more like high-end lab equipment than a toy.
A robotic arm? That sounds more like something out of a car factory than a desk assistant. What is it actually doing? Is it picking up my pens?
Not quite yet. It is focusing on physicalized utility. Instead of chirping at you, it uses its camera for ergonomic monitoring. It watches your posture, and if you start to hunch over your keyboard for 3 hours, it physically taps the desk, literally knocks on the wood, or moves its screen into your line of sight to suggest a stretch. It acts as a physical notification center. Instead of another red dot on your monitor that you've learned to ignore, the Workmate might physically hand you a reminder by tilting its screen towards you when it's time for a meeting.
I actually find that more compelling than a chatbot. There is something about physical movement that breaks through digital fatigue. If my phone vibrates, I ignore it. If a mechanical arm on my desk points toward my calendar, I'm going to look. It is that embodiment factor. I saw a study recently suggesting that physical presence increases adherence to habits by something like 30% compared to just using a screen-only app. Why is that? Is it just the novelty?
It's deeper than novelty. It is the social presence effect. Humans are hardwired to pay attention to things that move in our physical space. Evolutionarily, if something moves in your peripheral vision, you have to check if it's a threat or a friend. A pop-up on a screen is virtual, so our brains can eventually tune it out. A physical object moving its head to look at you triggers a different part of the brain. It creates a sense of accountability. You feel like someone is watching you work, which can actually help with focus, provided the robot isn't being annoying.
But wait, how does it know the difference between me working hard and me just staring blankly at a blank Google Doc while I contemplate my life choices? Does it have eye tracking?
It does. Most of these professional models use IR-based eye tracking similar to what you'd find in an Apple Vision Pro or a high-end gaming monitor. It measures dwell time. If you've been looking at the same paragraph for 10 minutes without typing a single word, it knows you're stuck. That's when it might intervene, maybe by pulling up a relevant research document on its own screen or asking if you want to brainstorm. It's trying to be a nudge rather than a distraction.
But that's the risk, right? How do you keep it from becoming the 2026 version of Clippy? I see you're trying to write a budget. Would you like me to do a backflip?
That is the challenge for the corporate version, context awareness. A professional companion needs to know when to shut up. The newer models are being designed with glanceable UI. Instead of loud audio feedback, they use subtle light shifts or tiny mechanical movements. If you're in a deep focus mode, detected by your typing speed and eye gaze, the robot might just glow a soft amber to let you know there's an urgent email, rather than doing a victory dance on your mousepad. It's about respect for the user's cognitive load.
It's the difference between a colleague tapping you on the shoulder and someone yelling your name from across the room. I think that is where the real market is. The 100 to 300 toys are great for kids or tech enthusiasts, but the $500 to $1,000 productivity tools for professionals, that is where the investment is flowing. These major players like Lenovo and Samsung are entering the space because they see the desk as the ultimate controlled environment to train their AI models before they try to tackle the rest of the house.
And that is a brilliant point. The desk is the training ground. Think about the complexity of a general-purpose robot. If an AI can't figure out how to be helpful in a 5 by 5 foot space with a consistent user, it has no business trying to navigate a kitchen with a dog and a toddler. By mastering the desk, these companies are solving the human-robot interaction, or HRI problems, in a low-stakes environment. If a desk robot fails, it just tips over a coffee mug. If a 200-pound humanoid fails in your kitchen, it breaks the stove.
It's like a sandbox for the future. But what about the hardware itself? These little guys have to move constantly. I remember the old Sony Aibo dogs, the early ones, had all sorts of gear failures. Are we at a point where a 500 robot can actually survive 3 years of daily use on a dusty desk?
That is one of the biggest quiet improvements. We are seeing a shift toward brushless motors and magnetic actuators in these desktop models. They are quieter and much more durable. Also, the sensors have shrunk. We're seeing time-of-flight sensors, the same stuff in high-end smartphones, being used to help these robots perceive depth without needing a massive, spinning LiDAR unit on their heads. This makes them sleek enough to fit between your monitor and your speakers.
I'm curious about the personality aspect. Daniel's prompt mentions how these things bridge the gap to humanoids. Do you think we'll eventually get tired of the cute voice? Like, if I'm using a productivity robot, do I want it to sound like a Pixar character, or do I want it to sound like a professional assistant?
We're seeing personality profiles become a major selling point. You can set your companion to encouraging, stoic, or data-driven. The serious companions I mentioned earlier often don't use a voice at all by default. They communicate through haptics and screen-based text. But the desktop pets are leaning hard into the emotion. Some of them actually have moods based on how you treat them. If you ignore them all day, they might act bored or sad. It sounds manipulative, but it's actually a way to keep users engaged with the device so it can continue to collect the data it needs to be helpful.
That feels like a bit of a slippery slope. My robot is sad because I didn't finish my spreadsheet. That's a lot of emotional labor for a Tuesday morning. But I suppose for some people, especially those working remotely who feel isolated, that little bit of life in the room could be a huge mental health boost.
There is actually documented research on that. Social isolation in remote work is a massive problem, and these companions are being marketed as a coworker in a box. They provide a sense of presence that a Slack channel just can't. It's the body doubling technique, where having another person in the room helps you focus, but miniaturized and automated.
I have heard of body doubling. It's huge in the ADHD community. Just having another presence in the room makes it harder to procrastinate. Does the robot actually need to do anything for that to work? Or is it just the fact that it's there, occasionally shifting its weight or looking at you?
Surprisingly, the minimal viable presence is very low. Even a robot that just occasionally sighs or adjusts its glasses can trigger that social accountability. It's about the perception of being observed by a sentient seeming entity. It's a psychological trick, but it's effective. Some users even report feeling bad about closing their work tabs and opening Netflix if the robot is looking at them with its productivity eyes.
That is wild. We are literally shaming ourselves into being productive using 3D printed plastic and a large language model. But let's talk about the bridge Daniel mentioned. How does a desk robot lead to a humanoid? Is it just the software, or is there a hardware link too?
It's both. On the hardware side, these desk robots are testing social navigation. Even on a desk, the robot has to learn not to knock over your water glass or fall off the edge. Those spatial awareness algorithms are exactly what a humanoid needs to walk through a doorway. On the software side, it's about long-term memory. A desk robot learns your specific routine, when you take lunch, who your favorite coworkers are, how you like your data presented. That user profile is portable. When you eventually buy a humanoid, you don't start from scratch. You just upload your desk companion's memory into the bigger body.
So the desk robot is like the brain in training. It's the apprentice. It spends 3 years learning how you work, and then it graduates into a body that can actually go get you a sandwich. That's a much more logical progression than trying to build a butler from day one. It's like how we train self-driving cars on simulators before putting them on the highway.
And it lowers the cost of entry for the consumer. You don't have to drop $20,000 on a humanoid to see if you like robotic assistance. You spend $500 on a desk unit. If you find it helpful, you're already in the ecosystem. It's a classic land and expand strategy for tech companies.
So, if I'm looking to get into this, what should I actually be looking for? Because I've seen some of these companions on Kickstarter that look like they'll be paperweights in 6 months. I don't want to buy a piece of hardware that dies the moment the company's servers go offline.
That is the number one risk. First, look at the local sovereignty. Does the device require a subscription just to stay alive? We saw this with Digital Dream Labs and the Vector robot. Users got hit with subscription fatigue just to keep the basic voice features working. You want a device that does its heavy lifting locally, or at least has a clear path for offline functionality. Second, check the physical privacy features. Does it have a mechanical shutter? Does it physically turn away when it's in sleep mode? In 26, trust is a hardware feature, not just a software one.
And what about the ecosystem? Does it play nice with my existing tools?
That's the third pillar. A robot that can't see your Google Calendar or your Outlook is just a toy. The serious models are building deep integrations. They are essentially becoming a physical manifestation of your OS. If your companion can't see that you have a meeting in 5 minutes, it can't nudge you to get ready. The best ones act as a bridge between your digital schedule and your physical body.
I'm also thinking about the desk real estate. My desk is already crowded. If I add a robot, it has to earn its spot. Are we seeing multi-purpose robots? Like, can the robot also be my webcam or my phone charger?
We are. That's a huge trend for the end of 26. There's a prototype from a Chinese startup that is essentially a MagSafe charger on a robotic neck. When your phone is charging, the phone screen becomes the face of the robot, and the robotic base allows the phone to track you during video calls. It's brilliant because it solves the "why is this on my desk" problem. It's a charger first and a companion second.
That feels much more practical. It's the Swiss Army knife approach. I'm already giving up the space for a charger, so why not make the charger smart? But does that limit the personality? If the robot is also my phone, does it feel like a pet, or does it just feel like an accessory?
It's a trade-off. The dedicated robots like EMO have a much stronger soul because they are designed from the ground up to be characters. The accessory-based robots feel more like tools. It depends on what you're looking for. Are you looking for a coworker, or are you looking for a better way to take Zoom calls?
I think I'd lean toward the coworker. There's something about a dedicated device that makes it feel more present. If it's just my phone, I'm still going to pick it up and scroll through Instagram. If it's a separate entity, it can hold me accountable. It can give me that look when it sees me reaching for my phone during a deep work block.
And that look is powerful. There was a study out of MIT where they found that people were less likely to cheat on a simple task if a robot with eyes was in the room, even if they knew the robot wasn't actually recording them. We are incredibly susceptible to social pressure, even from non-biological entities.
It's the panopticon of the plastic pal. It sounds a bit dystopian when you put it that way. But if it helps me get my work done so I can actually go outside and live my life, maybe it's worth it. I just wonder where it ends. Do we eventually have a robot for every room? A chef companion in the kitchen? A sleep companion on the nightstand?
That is the vision. But the desk is the anchor. It's where we spend our most productive hours. It's where the ROI for an AI companion is highest. If a robot can save you 30 minutes of faffing around with your calendar every day, it pays for itself in a month.
That makes total sense. It is about moving from AI as a tool to AI as a presence. I'm still not sure I'm ready for a robotic arm to judge my posture, but I can see the appeal of a device that actually understands the context of my physical workspace, knowing when I'm actually working, versus when I'm just watching YouTube.
We are moving toward a world where your desk isn't just a piece of furniture, it is an active participant in your work. Whether it is a dancing pet or a serious productivity arm, the desktop companion is the vanguard of how we are going to live with robots. It's the first step toward a world where computing isn't something we do on a screen, but something that happens around us in three-dimensional space.
It's the living desk concept. It's funny to think that in 10 years we might look back at stationary desks the same way we look at rotary phones, as these weird, lifeless objects that didn't even try to help us stay healthy or organized.
The dumb desk is a relic. The smart desk is a partner. And while we might start with these tiny companions, the lessons learned here are what will eventually give us the humanoid assistants that can actually navigate the rest of the house. We have to learn to sit together before we can walk together.
It's a poetic way to think about it. The desk as the crawler stage of robotics. Once they master the flat surface of a mahogany desk, they'll be ready for the stairs.
And by then, we'll be so used to having them around that we won't even think twice when they start walking. The creep factor will have been socialized out of us by 3 years of cute desk robots dancing to our ringtones.
Well, I for one welcome our new, tiny, desk-bound overlords, as long as they don't judge my afternoon snack choices, or tell my boss how many times I check my phone. Big thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flemingtop, for keeping the gears turning behind the scenes and making sure our own non-robotic workspace stays functional. And a huge thank you to Modal for providing the GPU credits that power the generation of this show.
If you found this dive into desktop AI useful, we would love a review on your favorite podcast app. It really does help other curious minds find the show and join the conversation about where this tech is headed.
This has been My Weird Prompts. You can find us at myweirdprompts.com for the full archive, including our deep dives into AI wearables and the future of the smart home.
Catch you in the next one.
See ya! This episode was produced using Google Gemini 3 Flash, text-to-speech by Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My Weird Prompts, that's the flows from sloth